Last Thursday, Ubisoft finally revealed the Assassin's Creed Black Flag remake, the existence of which had been leaked for years at that point. And in that time, rumors have swirled as to what Ubisoft would actually change from the original. At one point it was rumored that they'd turn it into an RPG, which thankfully they did not. Still, many people were skeptical, myself included, but the reveal has subverted all of our expectations. It actually looks like a great remake, refining the original's flaws, keeping its core intact, while bringing it into a modern era, visually speaking. However, I have some thoughts and doubts that I want to share with you. If you've seen my videos on open world games or my analysis of AC1, you know how much the early Assassin's Creed games have shaped me and my taste in games. For better and for worse, I am a lifelong fan of this franchise, and I can't seem to ever quite detach myself from it. Being such a veteran of the series, I wanted to give my 2 cents on this reveal and hopes for the future of this series. But as always, before we get into that, hi, I'm Jerry, and welcome to my channel Scharfsinn, a place for game reviews, essays, and the occasional analysis focused on games from a variety of different genres. I also like to write reviews of I'm backlogged to share my immediate experiences with the games I play. If you're interested in any of that, I'd be glad to see you stick around. But now, let's get started. First of all, I want to talk about the graphics and aesthetic of this remake. So the game of course goes the route of modernizing the graphics to contemporary standards with vastly more detail in characters and environments, much more realistic lighting, objects swaying in the wind, the whole deal. And while I don't hold the stance that more realism equals better visuals, Black Flag is a game that actually benefits from this uplift. Unlike games such as AC1 and 2 that have a washed out look to them that actually add to their surreal atmosphere, Black Flag never quite had that same quality in mind. It always seemed to go for that realism, which it didn't quite achieve in 2013. I mean, back then it looked amazing, it still looks awesome and perfect for what it tried to do, but I think that bringing it to this current level of graphics will actually make the experience of traversing the open seas even more immersive. An adjacent feature that will also add to this immersion is the fact that it's all seamless now. In case you don't remember, there were actually loading screens in the original every time you wanted to enter and leave a city. These are completely gone now, and that's a perfect change. Another nice change is that they actually made the tailing missions less strict. They are still in the game and they are probably still numerous, but being detected in them is no longer an instant death or failure. You can still move on and then kill the targets and rob them, and they have a piece of paper on them that has information that you can use. I think that's a nice way to make the game feel more organic, less restrictive and more immersive ultimately. And so I think that's a flat out good change and I have no notes about it. But one thing I am hung up on is the UI or heads up display. So Ubisoft made a lot of changes here. For one, the minimap is gone, which I think is good, and it's been replaced with a compass, which makes sense. But I don't like how the UI looks ripped straight from AC Shadows. It has the same clean lines, the same layout, and I hate this homogenization because it lacks the personality that earlier AC games had, where each and every game went for a distinct look, a different UI, and made it feel like you were actually in a different version of the Animus. And now the last few games have all looked the same in that way, and I think that's a missed opportunity. And in general, I don't want to think of shadows when I'm playing Black Flag, even though, as we'll get into later, there are a few more ways in which Shadows makes its presence known in this remake. One of the things I was most concerned about was the story and the changes that they would make. But even though there are some differences, the core of it seems to remain the same, thankfully. Cutscenes even use the same motion capture footage from the original, just touching up the graphics and making the faces more expressive. They are also adding completely new narrative content, such as extra storylines with Steve Bonnet and Blackbeard, as well as some side stories that involve new officers you can recruit to your ship, where the cutscenes are also apparently mocapped and fully realized, which shows a level of care and effort that has been lacking in the recent games. I think the best remakes do this, removing little and only adding meaningful content, like the remake of Resident Evil 1 does. And I also like that the original writer, Darby McDevitt, is also working on this, so he is writing some of these new scenes, and that shows a level of respect for the source material that I didn't really know Ubisoft had anymore. But with this new director of the franchise, who was also the original creative director of Black Flag at the helm, he apparently made a lot of changes to bring this closer to the original again and respectfully add to it. In general, I love how they are marketing this game, because they are not just saying, oh, you can be a pirate and that's all this is, but they are explicitly also talking about assassins and the Assassins vs. Templars component of the story, because even though it is a pirate story, yes, there's so much Assassin's Creed DNA at its core that is often overlooked, and clearly Ubisoft is aware of that in actually marketing this game like it should be. marketed. As for the modern day side of the equation, it's apparently gone, and while I won't particularly miss the iteration of it in Black Flag, it makes me concerned for the AC1 remake that is rumored to be in the works, because removing modern day from that game would mean butchering it completely. Here in Black Flag though, while I did like the idea of playing as an Abstergo employee and seeing its inner workings and how they have evolved and gamified the Animus, it started a story that has never gotten a proper conclusion, and so I totally get why you would omit this part of the game, because in this case I would agree it's not really the reason why anyone loved Black Flag. Apparently there are still some nods to the Animus in modern day through so-called rifts, but they are still focused on Edward's story. The details on this were vague for now, but there is some context apparently. As for Parkour, which has been a contentious topic for years in the series, or always it seems, it very much seems to adopt the system from Shadows that they have now built up and polished with updates. So you have all the features that you would want in a parkour system in my mind. You have the back ejects, you have the side ejects, you have the manual jumps, you have all of that, but there's still a lack of momentum to the movement. You can clearly see when every action starts and ends, and there's not that feeling of flowing into them like you have in the old Assassin's Creed games, even the original Black Flag, or games such as Mirror's Edge or Dying Light, all these parkour focused games. And don't get me wrong, this looks good, but it could be so much smoother. There are still some months for them to polish it, but I personally doubt that they are going to make it any better at this point, because they had the system for years in some shape or form, and it has always had this issue with a lack of momentum, of flow. But still, it's great that they have all these features that a system like this should have. You do have the freedom that Assassin's Creed used to be known for, so I like that. Even if again it reminds me a lot of Shadows, which isn't the thing I want to think about when I play this game. But the same was for the combat, which seems to adopt much of the same philosophies of the newest games in the series, with more hitbox driven system, which isn't as focused on countering and instant kills such as the old games were. This is very much a system focused on chaining together attacks and different abilities that are on cooldown, but unlike Odyssey, Valhalla and Shadows, you do actually have the chain assassinations here again. They're not as easy to pull off or as endless as in the old games, but you can actually perform up to 4 of these after a perfect parry, which is a nice touch and brings together the old and new combat systems in a smart way. And I think that's a good change, because it makes for a more challenging system in general, though I hope that it doesn't lean into the overly button mashy combat with very spongy enemies like in the newest games. Honestly, from the trailer alone, it looks quite satisfying and polished, and there are even a lot of the same animations from the original, just polished up, tidied up, a bit more snappy, a bit faster, which is nice to see, honestly. I'm not a big fan of the visual effects necessarily, that look a bit over the top and also again reminiscent of AC Shadows, which I don't want to see all the time, but Ubisoft is already responding and is toning down these effects. Combat in the original Black Flag was never about challenge. It was a power fantasy that invited you to express yourself in stylish ways. Bringing it closer to games like Shadows does diminish that, but I think adding more depth and challenge is ultimately a fair trade-off. How it actually feels to play, we'll have to wait and see, but I like how this looks. Last thing I want to talk about is the removal of multiplayer, which I know many people won't miss, but I personally have always liked the old PvP multiplayer in the Assassin's Creed games, particularly in Brotherhood and Revelations, but even in Black Flag, which was the last time we ever saw this type of multiplayer. It was such a unique translation of the social stealth aspects of Assassin's Creed into an engaging PvP experience. I especially liked the game mode where you were assigned another player as a target that you had to take out as stealthily as possible, while avoiding another player that was hunting you at the same time. It was such a fun game of cat and mouse, and this would have been a perfect opportunity to reintroduce it after 13 years. Ubisoft is working on some kind of separate multiplayer AC game, but at this point in time we have no idea what that will look like. I understand the omission of this mode, yet this could have justified the price tag of €60 a lot more than the base game does on its own. So that's basically my thoughts on this reveal. I am cautiously optimistic that this will be the faithful yet rigorous remake that it looks to be, and that it sets a foundation for the future of the series that prioritizes storytelling and freeform parkour again, while also finding a middle ground between the old and new combat systems. With recent rumors of the next game in the series, Project Hexe is paddling back on its fantastical elements, and with a creative at the head of a franchise who knows what people used to love about it, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that Assassin's Creed is on an upward trajectory. That's it from me though. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Black Flag Resynced and of the state of the franchise as a whole. I'm eager to read your comments, and I hope to see you again next time. Take care.